Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is an absolute marvel. It explores postmodernism and modernism in a way that I've never seen popular mainstream media do before. It's also the most coherent film I've seen in that it not only advocates for certain ideas, but it also embodies them. It's the opposite of cuties. This is what happens when you don't starve the art majors. But you should, because they're annoying. Because the film is so meta and it subverts pre-established practices in terms of both scriptwriting and artistic choices, many people label it as postmodernist. Postmodernism being a cultural movement that rejects mainstream established narratives and embraces the subjectivity and relativity of meaning. Common techniques in postmodernist art are the deconstruction of conventional artistic forms to challenge the traditional notion of meaning, embracing the multiplicity of interpretation, making intertextual references to other artworks to challenge the notion of authorship, the use of irony, the blending of diverse styles, and cultural critique. But I think the film isn't purely postmodernist. It also displays modernist characteristics, as its subversion still falls under a broad framework of progressivism and a certain ethical truth, and thus I think the film is metamodernist, and above everything else, I think is humanist. So let's talk about the postmodernist characteristics of the film. A major postmodernist characteristic is its eclecticism. The premise of the film being interdimensional travel is a perfect way of incorporating eclecticism. It forces us to focus on the diversity and the subjectivity of perspectives and experiences in the different universes, and allows the film to combine clashing art styles in its animation. Postmodernist art subverts the notion of a linear progression of time by referencing old art styles or past movements, which is what the movie does. In designing its characters, this movie takes common tropes and subverts them to humanize the characters and make them three-dimensional. For example, the school counselor who's a boring middle-aged woman but is surprisingly astute about Miles, the love interest girl who has a personality, the annoying punk who turns out to be based as hell, the heroic alpha male with a sad origin story who's actually kind of a loser, and the love triangle that turned out to not exist. The film subverted the villain trope by giving him an insignificant backstory of being hit by a bagel instead of some tragedy like his whole family died, but it fully humanizes the villain by showing how such an insignificant thing can cause social alienation. He's truly a victim. The universe gave him interdimensional chickenpox and just forgot about him. The film doesn't dismiss his pain as a gag. Ultimately, it makes us feel it, through the incredible animation and voice acting. Every perspective, from the parents to the children, from the hero to the villain, the film attempts to make us understand. It subverts the trope of the chosen one by first making it seem cool.
My name is Miles Morales. I got bitten by a radioactive spider and you know the rest.
Then later revealing that he was not the chosen one, he was an anomaly. But then the film subverts the negative connotations surrounding the concept of anomalies, but the film embraces relativism and subjectivity, both being core principles of postmodernism. The biggest example of relativism in the film is the debate over the Spider-Verse trolley problem, namely, should I kill my dad or should I kill everyone else, between Miles and Miguel. The film fully shows how each character's backstory affects the way they see the world, and thus their approach to the trolley problem. Miguel witnessed how disrupting a canon event made him lose his daughter again and killed everyone else, and he carries immense guilt because of that. Miles, on the other hand, has a loving family that taught him to believe in himself, and he carries that Gen Z rebelliousness and the belief that no minority should be sacrificed for the welfare of the majority. Both factors contributed to Miles questioning the premise of the trolley problem. Rather than seeking a singular truth, the film illustrates the diversity of human experience and recognizes the value of multiple context-dependent truths and narratives. The film is subverting the idea of what a superhero is. Miguel represents a traditional superhero. He has a tragic backstory that relates to the loss of a loved one, and the traditional qualities of masculinity, namely physical power, rigidity, and authority. But the film subverts Miguel's seriousness by interrupting his dramatic scenes with snarky remarks from everybody else around him, and throwing a baby at him when he's trying to have an adult conversation. The postmodernism in the film is embodied by its Gen Z characters because we're a postmodern generation. Gwen delivers a very meta line about Jeff Koons' dog, a signature postmodernist art piece. When the Renaissance bird thing scoffs at the art and says, "You call that art? I thought that the movie was just going to make it a gag about haha modern art's stupid like every other movie would have done," but Gwen said, "It's a meta-commentary on art, but it is also art itself." Yes, very cool, Gwen. Intentions and experimentation matter. One of Miles' defining characteristics is him being a graffiti artist. Graffiti being a postmodernist art style because it's a rejection of traditional artistic conventions, and Hobie is just postmodernism in the flesh. However, postmodernism subverts structure and genre, but this film still lies very neatly in the superhero movie genre. Miles' character still follows the hero, the chosen one trope, and the story still follows the overarching linear narrative of a hero's journey. Probably. We don't know because they didn't finish the goddamn movie. Although it's the most morally nuanced superhero movie I've seen by far, there still clearly is a right and a wrong, or rather, a hero and a villain. When the movie challenges dominant perspectives, it only does so within a broad, widely accepted framework, such as that of the hero movie genre or the ethical code of maximizing human welfare. For example, the film rejects the premise of the trolley problem by saying, "What if we saved everyone instead of having to pick?" But if it truly was questioning the entire premise of the trolley problem, it would say, who said that human lives have intrinsic value? Value is objective, nothing is real, and nothing matters. So this film isn't purely postmodernist. But it's not because they simply didn't go all the way with the subversion, but because it also incorporates modernist techniques. The film is very progressive in how it speaks for the perspective of the youth and comments on the flaws of the past, and also in its optimistic undertone that holds hope about the future. This concern with progress and the idea of a better tomorrow is a modernist characteristic. That's why I think the film is metamodernist. Metamodernism, defined by Luke Turner as the mercurial condition between and beyond irony and sincerity, naivety and knowingness, relativism and truth, optimism and doubt, is the oscillation between modernism and postmodernism. This movie is sincere, warm, and compassionate. By placing a strong emphasis on human rights and human agency, it explores the philosophical theme of humanism. And I couldn't fit that in the title or else it would be too long. Humanism is a philosophy that believes in the intrinsic value of human lives and advocates for social justice and human rights. The humanism in this movie doesn't just coexist with its metamodernism. The metamodernism in the movie serves the humanism. It's common for metamodernist works to include humanist elements. Although there's an oscillation between hope and despair in this film, there's always an underlying stability of hope and empathy and optimism. That I see as being separate from a part of the metamodernist oscillations. It's different from the modernist heroism in that it not only focuses on individuality and progressivism, but it heavily emphasizes humanity, morals, and human potential. Miles questions the premise of the trolley problem, to reach the solution, which is human agency. He challenges Miguel's established narrative in favor of writing his own story. Postmodernism doesn't just seek a singular truth, but this movie does. The truth that it seeks is humanism. The movie uses the trolley problem to illustrate the conflict between the majority and minority ideologies, and the way to resolve the conflict is with humanism, both the belief in the importance of human rights and the belief in human agency, or Miles's belief that we have the power to decide what happens to us. All the characters ultimately put their empathy before their principles and their ideologies, like when Jess and Miguel took Gwen even though they both knew that it wasn't the best idea for the organization, or Gwen's dad for forgiving Gwen for murdering her best friend, which he pretty much did. And everyone, well except for Hole, is motivated by a belief in the intrinsic value of human lives. When Miles decides to try and save everybody, the decision doesn't come from his postmodernist desire to change Miguel's established belief. It roots from empathy and his humanist belief that he's in charge of his own fate. This movie is incredibly political and opinionated, but not didactic at all. In everything that it does, it takes a stance. It doesn't explicitly state its stance in excruciatingly long monologues that it shoves in people's faces like other movies do, but its stance is in everything that it does. It's in every artistic choice in every moment. The movie makes Miles take the I can save all of them approach to the trolley problem, and the production team tries to do just that by standing up for so many groups of people and speaking on every social issue, from high schools preying on students who are ethnic minorities to men of the older generation neglecting their mental health. It puts liberal messages in the movie, and the production team also makes liberal choices, as in the character designs are incredibly diverse and inclusive without being on the nose. I just have so much respect for the people who worked on this movie, because you can see that they clearly believe in their vision. This animation made all the serious big boy, big girl films that came out this year look like absolute jokes. They didn't have to use unnecessary sex scenes to keep people watching as pretentious mediocrity just to not pass the Bechdel test or shove the most obvious morals in your face and stand there all smug like they made the most subversive feminist masterpiece of all time, because the nuance and depth of its perspective speak for themselves. A huge thank you to the people in my Discord server for the incredible fan art. Come join the Discord, we have fun times.